Well, hello there. I'm David Oakham of Okumarts Games, and I wanted to talk to you today about some of the things that I make for tabletop role playing games. They're available on my Patreon, and they're also available on Drive Thru Role Playing. I also want to talk to you about where I'm going with this, so come right back, and I'll be talking about that.
Okumarts games. Okumarts games. Okumarts games. Hoorah! Whee!
So I've started making role-playing game products in 2009. I was making paper miniatures for campaigns, which I didn't have miniatures for, and I didn't know how to get miniatures for them. So I started making my own. I was really inspired by the Cardboard Warriors forum of One Monk Games by Ken Hartman, and he really kind of encouraged me to make my own. And I was really blown away by the quality of people's work that was starting to come out around that time. And I thought, I can make some fun stuff. And so that's what I started doing. I had always been downloading and building a lot of paper terrain since the early 2000s for my tabletop gaming. I had a few projects of my own that I wanted to make, and I thought, let's do it. So I kind of got caught up in doing a drawing a day in 2009, and I stuck with it. I did 365 drawings, just like that, over the course of the year. And I felt very accomplished. I felt like I did something. I felt like I had made a real difference. And I got to admit, I got a little burnt out. So in 2010, I decided I was going to take a year off of art. And the only art I was going to do was going to be art that was not commercially viable. So I made a whole bunch of these Star Trek paper miniatures because at the time I couldn't really find a lot of affordable Star Trek miniatures that fit what I wanted for my game. I was running a Where No Man Has Gone Before Microlight 20 game by Mike Berkey, and I found it was a lot of fun. And I needed miniatures, so I made my own. I made a lot of miniatures in that year just for Star Trek, and a lot of people were inspired by this, and they also made their own miniatures. There was a great, led to this great boom of paper miniatures for Star Trek, but also there was a online builder that was made that you could make miniatures on the fly. So I mean, it led to some really cool, creative paper miniature endeavors for Star Trek, which I thought was amazing. I thought it was fun. And then I started thinking, I got a couple of games that I don't really have miniatures for. I had a Western game. I had ideas I wanted to do for a Flash Gordon like skirmish game that was kind of inspired by Necromunda, and I thought, there's stuff that I want to do, and I don't have miniatures for them, and there's no way I could afford miniatures for them, and there was no way that I could store them in my house. So I thought paper miniatures were a good option. They're fold flat. You can store them in a binder on a bookshelf. The bases are just foam core. However, Litco started producing some really amazing plastic bases for paper miniatures that use friction to hold the miniatures in. And I must admit, I went a little crazy and bought a lot because I was really impressed. And I've been using them to this day. I use them every week. So, value for money right there. It was totally worth it. But so I started making other miniatures. I started making a Western set called Whiplash Trigger, which was based on a Microlight 20 Western game that I ran. I started making a line called Retro Space, which were miniatures of sort of a retro future, kind of like Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers. I started making miniatures for Serene Fist, which was a martial arts game. And then I realized I need miniatures for my fantasy game. I had a lot of miniatures, and the Pathfinder miniatures were starting to come out, and the blind box Pathfinder miniatures, and HeroClix were being used for supers. So I was like, you know, I could also get into this. So I started making my own kind of old school miniatures based on how I ran games like Dungeons and Dragons and RuneQuest all those years ago. And so I went back to my inspirations from my old D&D games and Fantasy Hero, which it eventually became, and I started making miniatures, Darkfast Classic Fantasy, which then morphed into its own game called Darkfast Dungeons, and then that kind of morphed into Save the Day, and eventually I had games I was running Kickstarters for, and I really was excited to populate these games with paper miniatures because when you're starting a new game and you like using miniatures, it's always a good idea to have something available for players. So that's why I started making a wide variety of paper miniatures. I was getting back into playing Traveller, and I thought it would be a lot of fun to make a series of paper miniatures which were sort of science fiction-y, almost kind of retro science fiction, almost like science fiction from the 80s and 90s, with some modern stuff in there. I don't think that my paper miniature sets would be too out of place with a more modern sensibility. So Extrastellar became a big series, very popular, and I really like that series. So I've tried to make paper miniatures for all genres, and I was selling them on Drive-Thru Role-Playing, and eventually I started a Patreon. I saw the Patreon as sort of a subscription service, but now, as the paper miniatures have evolved, I'm thinking as my Patreon evolves, I'm going to make not just a subscription service, but also an opportunity for people to save a bit of money. Instead of just buying them on Drive-Thru Role-Playing, I want the Patreon to have some added value. So I'm going to make them, a little less expensive than buying the paper miniatures on Patreon or on Drive-Thru Role-Playing. So that's going to be a bit different. So that's going to change soon. And there's going to be levels of, being able to access them on Drive-Thru Role-Playing so that you have them in your library there, so that if you stop my Patreon, you can go back and get them, to re-download them if your hard drive crashes or you get a new computer or something. So it's a work in progress, and I'm thinking of expanding my Patreon world to include zines. So making smaller books that are put together in a course of the month. And these are all going to be based on games that I'm currently running with my group or have wanted to run. I have a weekly gaming group that plays every Monday, and we've been playing together, some of us, since about 1981. So it's been a long-standing group. The thing I love about my group is that they are pretty much up for anything. They'll play any kind of game, and they'll try something. They'll experiment with games. That's awesome, because it's allowed me to kind of design games and make games that I can have a built-in playtest unit for. And they know me. They know my tropes. They know my patterns. So creating new games is a good way of keeping it interesting, so that they are kind of guessing as to where things are going with this. So I'm looking to launch a new Patreon that's specifically a zine a month, and the zines will be about 15 to 30 pages of material. I've been really looking around at other zine makers and the stuff that they do, and there's some really good material out there. I'm humbled, but I think I have something to share. So I want to make a Patreon that's specific to that. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm going. That's where I've been, and I hope that you will follow along, and I'll try to keep up putting these videos out to help you understand what it is I'm doing, and just let me know, like and subscribe, and give me a comment. Let me know what you want to see on here, what's good, what's bad, and we'll try to help. Okay, talk to you later. Thanks for coming by. Toodaloo.